Firstly, the moment you start asking about children's perspective, it takes you away from making broad generalizations, indeed the risk of stereotyping, as so often happens in policy discourse. Because if you're asking about children's perspectives, you start asking about children in particular communities, in particular villages or in urban centres, and in particular families. And therefore you immediately get a disaggregation of the issue, and you start to realise that while there's huge advantage in big statistics and big surveys and so on, and getting overall means and standard deviations and all the rest of it, having a more nuanced view of how that works out for individual communities and families is fundamental. That's point number one. Point number two is that the voice of children isn't necessarily the same as the voice of everybody else. And typically, parents are seen as being proxies for the voice of children. The parents know best for their children. Therefore, if you ask the parents what they think, the answer will be good enough for the children. But let me take an example. We asked a lot about people's views on children's and parents' views on education and schooling. And if you ask what do you think is most important about schooling, you don't necessarily get the same answer from children as you do from parents. After all, why should you? Children's experience is unique. If they're going to school, they are the ones that experience schooling as a student, whereas their parents only know it from outside the gates, if you like. So it's important to take account of children's views alongside parents' views. I think the single most significant change in children's lives over the last 20, 30 years is the extent of reach of modernity and the assumptions around children that go with modernity. That takes many different forms. Perhaps the most universalizing feature is the education for all agenda, which is bringing schooling into the lives of all children one way or another. It's certainly not a homogeneous experience. Schools are very different. Quality is very variable. Whether children actually access schooling is highly variable, but schooling touches their lives one way or another, even if they don't go to school. Technologies clearly bring a more global reach to children in terms of their engagement with. I remember when I was working in Bangladesh and I asked kids about their access to TV, they immediately talked about British football clubs and wrestling and stuff like that. So, you know, there is that engagement with it. So there is that universalizing and globalizing factor in relation to children's lives.